conversation today. Big meaning big,
Yeah.
global.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
we always have global conversations, don't we, you and I?
we do. And sometimes when it's just you and I, we say transatlantic, but
Uh-huh.
now in our, fourth plus year of
Hmm.
podcasting, I think we know where our listeners come from, and it really is global.
Yep.
So exciting conversation today. And, here on the cusp of ASAE annual convention, we can give people a little teaser, a little preview. But excited to introduce Sylvia Goner. Sylvia, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Elisa. Hi, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm
Culture
delighted.
whiz, obviously your jurisdiction is the entire planet, as you've demonstrated with your background. I appreciate that. But you're also the chair of the ASAE International Council. So this isn't just what you do, it's what you give back to the industry, and I love that. And you're speaking next week. So this
Yes,
really is like a freebie teaser of Sylvia's session next week. But it's been a busy summer for you, Sylvia.
it has been. We have produced this new toolkit, which we'll be speaking about at the annual conference in Cleveland. And I'm very happy that the council contributed to that. I put a lot of content in it. It's really designed to help associations globalize their operations and give them some very practical tools on how to go about doing that, which is, my area of expertise, something I've been doing my entire career in association management.
Fantastic. Excellent. Sorry, I was going to ask. Oh, go on. Sorry, Lise. Go on. If
No,
you.
no, no, you go. I want to give you some space here.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, I get super excited about globalization. I love international collaboration.
This is the most like hyped I've seen you.
Oh,
This is
I I just love it because the opportunities are just endless. The opportunity, and we talk all the time about the membership sector is a global sector, and the opportunities to reach out and learn from one another and connect and support each other are, well, arguably endless. I'm really interested. I've read the the report, the oversight that comes with the toolkit. I'm really interested to know what the drivers were for putting this together, because we talk about globalization. When
hasn't it been
sometimes
talked about forever? I
they
mean,
can be,
haven't we been
well, yeah.
talking about this for decades?
Well, this is it. They can be words that are sort of bandied around, can't they? So, what was what instigated putting this toolkit together? Because I think it's a great toolkit, and I just want to know, what pushed it, what created it.
Yeah, great question. I think it started with the research that ASA conducted of associations that are operating internationally, and they wanted to sort of get an update on what the current state of activity was with what's going on in the world. We were concerned, is globalization still a thing? Are associations slowing down or taking different direction? And so there was an extensive research conducted, and it confirmed that actually, no, associations are still continuing very much on their path to globalization. If I recall, over 50% of them
Hmm. Hmm.
even continue to want to expand further. And then there was like over 40% that just maintaining. So overwhelmingly 95% of associations that are operating internationally will continue to do so. And then there was some good data there that the organization wanted to share. But as always, there's a need for tools within this community of the how-tos that always comes up. There's an ongoing cycle of new members coming in, and you need to keep these things up to date. So we wanted to put something out there very practical because it was missing, and it's entirely free. It's you can download it. It's available, which I thought was a great gesture also from ASA to make that available to the community.
Oh, good. Then we'll put that in the show notes too, so people can go to that page and download it. I wonder how does an organization know, let's say you haven't yet gone into the international sector, you haven't yet globalized. How do you know if that is necessary or if you're ready? Is it a matter, I mean, can you go in proactively, or is it always somewhat of a reaction to what's happening beyond you?
It often starts in a reactive mode, in an ad hoc mode, sort of organically over time. Associations get requests from outside of their domestic borders. For U.S. associations, it very often starts in Canada, and it's not unusual to find U.S. associations maybe at the national level that start to attract members in other parts of the world, particularly if they have a certain, position within their industry or profession that attracts that. But again, that happens over a period of time, and before you know it, there isn't really a systematic approach to it, a strategy. And so even as the council, we do these quarterly World Cafes, and we recently did one on moving from an ad hoc to a strategic approach, because that works for a while, but then you really need to focus. Otherwise, your resources, your efforts will be spent potentially in some of the more difficult areas, because you don't always get requests where it might make sense to go. And so there is an approach to be taken that is a little bit more strategic that is often advised.
No, go on. I can see you were going to ask a question again. You're going to ask a follow-up.
You
Go
know
on.
what? I know I
can
have a
tell.
terrible poker face, but I'm deferring to you, Andrew. This is the topic you are fired up about. I'm laying back.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think, yes, that ad hoc approach, I think that a lot of associations adopt. I don't even think you can say they actively adopt them. They just kind of fall into this ad hoc sort of, responding to, as you say, a member in Australia, or, an individual over in, in Europe wanting to, access your resources or what have you. I think a lot of the time, when that happens, I think a lot of associations just sort of see dollar signs getting on an airplane and just, leaving, because it's so expensive to do. It's so expensive, arguably, to sort of be international without any sort of strategic or structured approach to doing it. I know myself, in the past when I've, with the associations that I've worked with, it's almost been sort of perceived as a bottomless money pit, going international. So I think it's great to see that, we're now advocating a structured approach to it. But I suppose from my side of the Atlantic, this paper, this toolkit is focused on supporting US based organizations primarily. Is that fair, Sylvia? Have I got that right? Yeah.
It's fair, because the majority of ASA's association members are US based.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things that I always sort of, I'm curious about is the focus on international organizations based in the US, or is it on associations who are looking to expand into other territories? Who's the primary market here?
Well, the market is whoever is going to have an interest in growing beyond their national borders. So it really doesn't matter where domestically you start. The language reflects maybe, US organizations or English-speaking associations wanting to expand, but the models and everything that's included in this toolkit, or the work that I do, is totally apropos for any association that wants to expand beyond its national borders, even at a regional level, because of the differences that exist from one market to the other. And we tend to lump these markets together sometimes when there are major differences, as you well know, even within Europe. I mean, I come from the European Union. That's where I grew up, and my parents worked for the EU in Brussels originally. So from a very young age, I have this understanding of how cultures are different, how everything is different from one border to the next. And we often make that assumption, and we want to lump everything together. Americans learned that operating in Canada is very, very different, and that they shouldn't just lump in Canadian operations within the US operations and assume it's the same. So yes, it can be, I don't want to say it can be a strategy that will take effort and money, but if you don't start in the market that is the most different from you, where you have to involve translation and localization, all types of things that will make it very difficult, and maybe approach it in a way that is more strategic, then you are likely to have a better result, and then your board and everybody will support it as well. You have a lot of naysayers in that market that will be like, oh, well, this is too complicated for us. So I often say the sooner you make that determination, the better, because otherwise you find yourself having to adapt things, and sort of that global readiness is much more difficult if it's an afterthought. And most associations that grow internationally, they didn't really start off that way. That's the majority of the ones I think that we see interested in this topic.
Go on, Lise. Go on, I'm gonna let you, because I've just got tons to say.
I do too. And, I want to take this from a member's perspective, because I think whether it's dollar signs or it's competitive pressure or it's going from reactive to wanting to be more strategic, I feel like in this going global conversation, often the unique needs of the member come secondary or come last. What does an international, or wherever you're not domiciled, that the audiences and the markets you're looking to expand into, what do those members deserve? How much should they expect? And when we talk about a value proposition that was built for your primary marketplace, you mentioned translations, I think about the difference in government affairs. Before you say yes to going global, what does that menu of services need to look like that you can truly deliver on? What does an international and global member living outside your primary borders deserve?
Yeah, you said it right. The value proposition may not translate the same way across borders, and that's for a number of reasons. If you have very localized services, if you offer, I don't know, discounts to your conference that is held in the US, how does that help somebody in Singapore? It doesn't translate. It's not the same value, clearly. So they deserve clearly a service for being part of this organization, but the membership in itself isn't really seen the same way across the world. And even if it's a challenge in the US as well, and some markets in the United States, that doesn't always translate. So there's the opportunity to look at what really attracts the individuals in other markets. It's often the training. It will often be certifications. Credentials are huge in certain parts of the world. So being able to look at what really delivers value and having that conversation and doing your research in each individual market to understand what matters and what adds, creates value added, is what is going to help make sure that your value proposition is appropriate. And that doesn't mean you have one per country, but you certainly want to be more flexible and have more of a menu of ways to participate. And sometimes it's networking that is huge. Sometimes it's that training, that conference that you want to bring to that region that might be very, very important. So it really depends a little bit, but many associations adapt their value proposition and their membership offer in different markets. They adapt to pricing accordingly as well, because there's at times and affordability issues in some markets. So it is a matter of localizing some of these things so that it creates that local value, which often is complemented with a presence in that country that's going to do the things the association can't do for you from their ivory tower global headquarters, including some of the advocacy, some of the things that only can be done on the ground, including recruiting individuals and doing localization of some of the offerings. Training rarely translates 100%, for example, from one country to the next. You're going to need some local trainers in place to localize those types of things. So it's a long answer to your questions. That they expect service. They expect to be part of the organization and get something in return for their money.
Well, you mentioned the 5 A's, the test for global appeal, because I would assume the worst thing you can do is open your doors or put something out and then they don't come. It's not relevant. It doesn't land the way you expect. What are the tests for that global appeal?
Yeah, associations make the mistake to just go out there, offer things, and then they're surprised because they hear back, this is not relevant.
Yeah.
And so I have a test, the 5 A's of global appeal, that really looks at any product or service. You can take it through this test, and the first thing will be to see if it's appropriate. Is it based on local legislation? Are the types of things the same for that particular market? Is it adaptable? Is a really important element to look at it, because you're going to need to adapt the product or service accordingly. Is it affordable? You have to look at whether, somebody in a certain market can afford what you have priced that particular training at. Is it acceptable from a cultural standpoint? When you look at content, there are certain things, or even your marketing that goes with it, might not be acceptable. And the last one is it
Awesome.
there you go. I like it. It's not, but
I didn't mean to pop quiz you or put you on the spot. There's lots of A words that we can throw in there. But how about this? You have to download the toolkit to find out the last A.
perfect. Yeah, I love that.
There you go. There you
Absolutely.
go. It's interesting. I think that's a really good point, actually, Elise, because I think you said, the word for me, one of the worst things I think, you can do is to ignore the cultural differences or the regulatory differences or the legislative differences that exist across the world. Because I mean, I've been member of several, and I've worked in support of several US based associations who will have their annual conference or their annual meeting, and they'll have breakouts for the regional chapters, and you'll have the Southwest, the Northwest, the Southeast, the Florida chapter, the California chapter, and then they'll have Canada and the rest of the world.
Sure.
And it's like, right.
That's very American of us, right?
That is very American.
I think that's how we handle some of our sporting championships.
Indeed, it is. Yes, the world champions in a game that only Americans play. But and I think for me, alarm bells, because of experiences like that, alarm bells ring for me when I see organisations who are talking about going global. I think, are you going global, or are you just sort of making some online offerings of it? Yeah.
Pandering.
Yeah, potentially pandering, but and are you trying to sort of use some shortcuts here by offering your standard US centric training, networking, etc., to an international market? And I think it's really important that when we talk about going global, that doesn't necessarily mean, does it, that you don't have to be active in all 190 plus countries in the world. I mean, it could just be that you have a really proactive membership, in 2 or 3 other countries, and I think that's really important as well for people to appreciate that it doesn't mean you have to do everything for everybody everywhere. It's it's completely impossible. And I think one of the reasons I was asking about, is it an international focus organizations, or are we talking about American organizations who want an international reach? Because again, from I talk from a European or UK perspective, our alarm bells really ring. Red flags are flying when we see American organizations that say, "Oh, we're going to open up our UK chapter," particularly if we perceive it as being in direct competition to perhaps an industry association that already exists, in the UK. And so that's why I'm kind of keen to understand, when there is a market that already exists, but there's also an opportunity, are we, presumably internationalization, globalization includes the kind of, or encourages the opportunity to collaborate rather than compete, because, I think often in a lot of countries, the UK, for example, is a really good example, because we're small. We're not very big, but we have, we have a lot of associations, a lot of trade associations, a lot of membership bodies. And I think, we would, and I see it a lot, actually. Oh, did you see that, the American Society of X, Y, and Z wants to open up, in London. Panic. But actually, I think, collaborating rather than competing is, for me, is the essence of really strong global relationships.
Well, and that's the question for Sylvia. Is there a tipping point or a litmus test or an equation that would help an association decide whether to initiate or to partner?
Yes, there is a really good way to assess markets. Because as we said earlier, it's not always to be reactive. And oftentimes associations would go into UK market because like, oh, it's the same language, it's similar, and it's a
Oh
developed.
no, Sylvia, we're
It's
two.
not.
We are two people separated by a shared language. Honestly,
Yeah, we do not speak the same language at all.
I was just getting to that. The mistake, as you said, is this US centric approach to look at it and say, oh, that's easy. It's developed market. We're going to go into it, as opposed to doing more systematic research. And so we have in the toolkit, for example, an assessment matrix that looks at a number of factors that need to be researched, that need to be assessed. And then that helps you prioritize where you have greater chances of success.
Yeah.
And that's when, partnerships are critical. There is no international global, as far as I'm concerned, without having local partners. That just is a given. My experience with every associations I've worked with, as staff or as, externally as a consultant, or even, as a volunteer, we needed local partners to do things. And so collaboration and not coming into it with this US centric approach that, we're bringing everything to the world, but rather where can we benefit from the knowledge and expertise and bring that and reshare it and, serve as a catalyst. Many associations end up in that role, because they'll find out that there's a lot of great things happening and they can create that connection. But for me, what I've noticed is the I don't know if it's a litmus test, but it's certainly a precondition for that to happen, is what you were touching on just a minute ago, which is the global mindset that needs to go into it. And I spend quite a bit of time talking to association executives about the global mindset and how to globalize their operations in a way that they are not going at it with this US centric approach. So I do, with Culture Wiz, we offer training to grow teams and executives to better work across cultures, to better communicate, build relationships across cultures, because they will often make those mistakes, burn bridges, miscommunicate, misrepresent themselves, and not understand these cultural nuances, sensitivities in certain markets that are critical for success. And without that, you can try to grow, but more than likely, it's going to take that much longer. It's going to cost you that much more money, and you potentially will run into obstacles that you didn't foresee. So it's all about not just looking at that market, but also culturally, how do you prepare your staff, your volunteers, often the ones that are on the road representing you, to have the proper mindset to globalize the organization.
And when I asked about how, as an organization, do you know if you're ready, whether it's ad hoc or strategic, I think people forget about that soft skill side, or that intangible of mindset, of culture. Because I know many organizations, whether it was in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, we tried that. And to your point, Sylvia, someone handled it incorrectly or insulted an entire country or whatever. And now you have an even harder road to hoe towards trying again, or globalizing with a new mindset and with the right cultural approach. So those are conversations that are not easy to have. I think that comes down to an executive committee's true understanding of where their organization exists, not just in terms of membership and leadership, but staff. And I'm going to ask the question that may be so basic and you've already solved the problem. Time zones. Andrew and I we've been up at 4 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the morning and midnight, and to customize for and show respect for and serve audiences wherever they may be. But again, it's not a US problem. It's not a UK problem. It's everybody's problem.
It sure is.
How do you, just give me the answer, solve the time zone management problem? I need to know.
I can't solve it, but I have found ways to address some of those challenges. So again, the expectation, first of all, that you're going to have to go a little bit outside of your domestic hours to have these types of meetings that, need to happen. Is part of it. You can outpost some of your people in other parts of the world. And, if you don't have local partners, that's another good approach, which I've done in the past, having people, on our staff, outposted in different regions so that they could be within those time zones and have those conversations. If you have an expectation that even if you go virtual, that people will attend, it's not likely to happen, but on demand is the way to go when it comes to, those types of services, training, on demand, recorded webinars, things that can still be repurposed and utilized just about anywhere in the world is a really important one. And and again, I recently advised a client, they were hiring, and I said, just let your staff know that they might be asked to work off hours and on different days, but that means they might get the whole Friday off if that works out that way. And some people are just totally prepared to do that and get up at 4 a.m. or to work till later in the evening, but not without having that expectation up front. Because if you don't, if you do it with existing staff or if you haven't talked to them about it, it might not work. And then volunteers posted in different parts of the world can be your representatives. So it really depends. There's ways around it, but no, I can't solve that problem for sure. That's all good.
I just realized,
and then do everything from there.
And not every Andrew and I deal with this every year. 4th of July means something very different to Andrew. Holidays mean very different things. We're pretty much the only ones that do Thanksgiving. The rest of the world is working. All these considerations. I think there's so much here. This toolkit is so robust and so valuable. I really encourage everyone to go get it. It's fresh, it's current. They can also catch you next week in Cleveland. You're speaking on August 13th. So check out Sylvia's session. Use these tools, decide if it's right, do it. If you're going to do it right. And do this with intention and with strategy. But Sylvia, thank you so much. Andrew, did you want to close us out? This is your favorite topic.
Only that you and I think, are living testament to the impact that global relations and internationalization can have on the association sector.
Peace is possible.
But the interesting thing, when you spoke about the 4th of July there, the irony is we're all celebrating.
That's the you lost day, and that's the we won day.
No, we're not. No. We no longer think of it as a loss.
Ooh, I better leave now.
Oh yeah, we don't want to fight in front of the kids, Andrew. Come on.
No. Thanks so much, Sylvia. I'm sorry I can't be there next week in Cleveland because I would love to attend your session, but I hope it goes really well.
Yeah, we have a fabulous international program throughout the event. Every day there's a few sessions that we've worked on as a council. So excited about that. Thanks for having me. I'm glad you had this important topic out there. So
of course, and it's not going away. It's definitely not going away. So interesting to see where these benchmarks kind of go in the months and years moving forward. I mean, we know this is not a quick to market thing necessarily, but we'd love to have you back, how this evolves and what some of those success stories and case studies are now that people have this information and these tools and logistics to move forward.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, let us know what you need to talk about, what country you're from and where your member organizations are and how you're serving your constituents. We'd love to hear from you. We've got lots of fans in Australia, Belgium.
Belgium. Don't forget Belgium.
The Philippines. I mean,
Germany.
Again, we want to have some international conversations. So bring us your topics. Let us know if you want to join us on the podcast, and you can download and find your podcasts or this podcast wherever you get yours. And until next time, put your members and your mission first.